was in Ecuador. U.S. soldier charged with selling stolen records. Russia gas era comes to an end. Macron acknowledges error on early election. These and many more stories to come your way in a moment. Please stay with us.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what
I have fought very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
Internet coverage it all on ATM Politics today. Every day our lives are changed by history.
We are one people. All of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what
I have
had many bends. Some of the passengers were returning from a wedding ceremony, and some families had lost multiple members, he said. Adding traffic police in the region had reported the truck was overloaded, which likely caused the accident. The state-run Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation, EBC, also reported that the passengers were traveling to a wedding when the accident occurred on Sunday. Deadly traffic accidents are common in Ethiopia, where driving standards are poor and many vehicles badly maintained. People, mostly students, were killed in 2018 when a bus plunged into a ravine in Ethiopia's mountain north. Security forces in Somalia had repulsed an attack by Islamic State suicide bombers on a military base in the northeastern region of Puntland on Tuesday, the local state broadcaster and a military official said. It was the first time Islamic State has attempted such a large and sophisticated attack in the country, coming weeks after the semi-autonomous state announced a major offensive against Islamic State and a rival Islamist group, the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab. The deputy speaker of Puntland's parliament was visiting the base at the time of the attack. Captain Yusuf Mohammed, an officer in Puntland's counter-terrorism forces, told reporters. He said 9 suicide bombers had been killed and several soldiers had been injured. Puntland State TV said on Facebook that 8 suicide bombers were among those killed in the raid near the town of Dajali in the Bari region. Somalia's information minister did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The group was officially recognized as the Somali province of Islamic State in 2017 and has been based in the mountainous areas of Puntland. For many years, it was considered a minor security threat in the Horn of Africa country compared with Al-Shabaab, which controls swaths of southern Somalia. In recent years, however, the Somali franchise has refashioned itself as an important part of the jihadist group's worldwide network, with its head, Abdullah Kadir Mumin, being named its global leader by some media outlets. Security analysts say Islamic State in Somalia has grown in strength because of an influx of foreign fighters and improved revenue through the extortion of local businesses, becoming the group's nerve center in Africa. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara said on Tuesday that French forces would withdraw from the West African nation, continuing the former colonial power's military exit from the region. Speaking in an end-of-year address to the nation, Ouattara said Ivorians should be proud of the modernized state of their own armed forces. In this context, we have decided on the coordinated and organized withdrawal of French forces, he said. France has been considering reducing its military presence in West and Central African countries, including Ivory Coast, to 600 troops from around 2,200 now, sources told reporters in November. France, whose colonial rule in West Africa ended in the 1960s, has already pulled its soldiers out of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, following military coups in those countries and spreading anti-French sentiment. The government of Chad, a key Western ally in the fight against Islamic militants in the region, abruptly ended its defense cooperation pact with France in November. Puerto Ricans were without electricity on New Year's Eve after a grid failure left nearly all of the island without power. Around 87% of clients were without power at 1 p.m. on Tuesday. According to a statement from energy distribution company Luma Energy, Puerto Rico has long dealt with chronic power outages as infrastructure crumbles. It will likely take 24 to 48 hours to turn the lights back on, Luma said in a statement. It added later that power had been restored to some critical facilities, including Centro Medico and Municipal Hospital in San Juan. While the cause of the outage is under investigation, preliminary findings point to a failure in an underground line, Luma said. Ivan Bays, a spokesperson for power generator Genera, said in a local radio interview that the line believed to have failed was operated by Luma and brought down plants belonging to Genera, as well as private generators. Luma did not answer direct questions about responsibility for the power lines. Neves, a former senator on the island, has long been a critic of operators of the power grid. The disaster has been more than a decade in the making, he said. The power generators are old, long past their life expectancy, and the operators have failed to properly invest for years. Such sentiment is common on the Caribbean island, a U.S. territory whose residents are U.S. citizens but do not have voting representation in Congress, cannot vote in presidential elections. Protesters have called for the island's government to cancel its contract with Luma. In response to a 2022 protest, Luma said it had inherited an electrical system that suffered years, in fact decades, of abandonment. 4 bodies discovered last week are a group of boys reported missing at the start of the month, Ecuador's Attorney General's office said on Tuesday, as a judge ordered detention for 16 military personnel while their alleged role in the disappearance is still investigated. The boys, aged between 11 and 15, went missing on December 8 from the Las Malvinas neighborhood in the coastal city of Guayaquil. Their families have said they went out to play soccer, and the case has sparked outrage throughout Ecuador, with protesters in capital Quito and elsewhere demanding answers about what happened to the children. President Daniel Noboa's government has deployed members of the military to patrol streets and assist law enforcement agencies amid a crackdown on crime, which has battered the country over the last several years. Commanders of Ecuador's armed forces said last week that the children were detained while allegedly committing a robbery and subsequently taken to a military base before being released. U.S. military appeal court has ruled that plea deals related to the man accused of masterminding the September 11, 2001 attacks and 2 accomplices can proceed after Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin had earlier moved to invalidate the agreements. In August, Austin rescinded plea deals that the Pentagon had entered into with the trio, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. In November, a U.S. military judge ruled that Austin acted too late on revoking the plea deals and that they were still valid. The order late on Monday by the U.S. Military Appeals Court upheld that ruling. The Pentagon declined to comment. It has previously said Austin was surprised by the plea deals and that the Secretary was not consulted because that process is independent. Under the deals, it is possible that the 3 men could plead guilty to the attacks and in exchange not face the death penalty. Mohammed is the most widely known inmate at the U.S. detention facility known as Guantanamo. Guantanamo Bay on the coast of Cuba. It was set up in 2002 by then U.S. President George Bush to detain foreign militants as suspects following the September 11 attacks on the United States. Mohammed is accused of masterminding the plot to fly hijacked commercial passenger aircraft into the World Trade Center in New York City and into the Pentagon. The 9/11 attacks, as they are known, killed nearly 3,000 people and plunged the U.S. into a two-decade war in Afghanistan. Including at the United Nations, have condemned torture and at Guantanamo Bay and elsewhere during the so-called war on terror and demanded an apology from Washington. Former President Barack Obama acknowledged in 2014 that the U.S. had engaged in torture and said it was contrary to our values. Separately on Monday, the Pentagon said that Rida bin Saleh al-Yazidi, one of the longest-held detainees at Guantanamo Bay, was repatriated from the detention facility to his home country of Tunisia. He was held without charge for over 20 years. The Pentagon said 26 detainees remained at the facility, of whom 14 are eligible for transfer. Texas' highest court on Tuesday rejected an effort by state bar regulators to discipline a top deputy to Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton over a case his office brought challenging the results of the 2020 presidential election. The Supreme Court dooms not only the case the State Bar's Disciplinary Commission filed against First Assistant Attorney General Brent Webster, but also likely a separate lawsuit against Paxton that he is seeking to have tossed. Justice Evan Young, writing for the majority, said the Commission's case against Webster amounted to second-guessing the claims that Paxton's office made in filings with the U.S. Supreme Court in the election case and therefore violated state constitutional separation of power principles. Webster, in a statement, hailed the decision, saying the state's bar's action amounted to ridiculous attempts to wage legal wars and were disgraceful, ridiculous, and a disservice to the people of Texas. The State Bar of Texas declined to comment, and the disciplinary cases stemmed from a long, short lawsuit that Texas filed with the U.S. Supreme Court in December 2020, seeking to overturn Democratic President Joe Biden's victories in 4 swing states over Donald Trump. The then president, who is set to return to the White House on January 20th, Paxton, a Trump ally, was cancelled of record on the case, and Webster appeared on the initial pleadings. The Supreme Court swiftly dismissed the case days after it was filed, saying Texas did not have legal standing to pursue it. In 2022, the State Bar of Texas Commission for Lawyer Discipline filed separate lawsuits, first against Webster and later against Paxton, seeking to hold them to account for 4 statements it said they made about their election fraud in their U.S. Supreme Court case. Those cases were a part of a flurry of efforts by state bar regulators nationally to impose discipline on Trump-aligned lawyers like Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, who facilitated Trump's efforts to overturn his 2020 election laws. In Webster's case, a trial court judge initially dismissed the commission's case in 2021, but an immediate appeals court in El Paso last year revived the case, prompting Webster to pursue a further appeal. Federal authorities on Monday unsealed an indictment accusing a U.S. Army soldier of selling and attempting to sell stolen confidential phone records. Cameron John Wagenius was arrested on December 28th and charged in the courthouse for the Western District of Texas in Waco with 2 counts of unlawful transfer of confidential phone records information, according to court records which did not specify his rank or where he was stationed. The court records did not give specifics about the allegations, but cybersecurity journalist Brian Krebs said on his website that Wagenius went by the name Kiba Phantom online and shared claims of multiple hacks, including call records allegedly related to Vice President Kamala Harris and President-elect Donald Trump. Krebs said Wagenius was 20 years old, but the Army did not confirm this. A Texas magistrate ordered Virginians to be sent to Seattle, where the federal prosecutors handling the case are based, according to court filing. That office is handling the prosecution of Connor Mocha and John Beans, who are accused of a range of crimes connected to a string of breaches of data connected to billions of sensitive customer service records, non-content call and text history records, banking and financial information, payroll records, driver's license numbers, passport numbers, social security numbers, and other personal information, according to an October 10th indictment. Mocha, 25, was arrested October 30th at his home in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, and faces extradition to the U.S. Canada's Department of Justice did not immediately respond to a question on Mocha's status. Bean is currently in jail in connection with accusations surrounding a separate hack in Turkey, where he was living. Mocha and Beans are likely involved in data theft and extortion of dozens of customer companies of Snowflake, a data storage and processing firm, such as researchers have said. United States on Tuesday imposed sanctions on entities in Iran and Russia, accusing them of attempting to interfere in the 2024 U.S. election. The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement that the entities, a subsidiary of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, and an organization affiliated with Russia's military intelligence agency, GRU, aim to stoke up socio-political tensions and influence the U.S. electorate during the 2024 U.S. election. The governments of Iran and Russia have targeted our election processes and institutions and sought to divide the American people through targeted disinformation campaigns. Treasury's acting Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, Bradley Smith, said in the statement. The United States will remain vigilant against adversaries who would undermine our democracy, Russia's embassy in Washington said in a statement to reporters. Russia has not and does not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries, including the United States. The Treasury said the Cognitive Design Production Center planned influence operations since at least 2023, designed to incite tensions among the electorate on behalf of the IRGC. The Treasury accused the Moscow-based Center for Geopolitical Expertise, CGE, of circulating disinformation about candidates in the election, as well as directing and subsidizing the creation of deepfakes. The Treasury said CGE also manipulated a video to produce baseless accusations concerning a 2024 vice presidential candidate. It did not specify which candidate was targeted. The Moscow-based center, at the direction of the GRU, used generative AI tools to create disinformation distributed across a network of websites that were designed to look like legitimate news outlets, the Treasury said. It accused the GRU of providing financial support to CGE and a network of US-based facilitators in order to build and maintain its AI support server and maintain a network of at least 100 websites used in its disinformation operations. Russia's once dominant gas supply to Europe via Ukraine, which flowed for decades, is set to end on New Year's Day with the collapse of the contract between the two warring countries that paid out billions to Moscow in gas revenue and to Kyiv in transit fees. The shutdown of Russia's oldest gas route to Europe ends a decade of fraught relations sparked by Russia's siege of Crimea in 2014. The European Union redoubled its efforts to reduce its dependence on Russian energy after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine in 2022 by seeking alternative sources. Liquefied natural gas (LNG) from Qatar and the United States has helped the EU find alternative supply. Pipe supply has come from Norway. The change was clear last year as Russian state-controlled gas exporter Gazprom recorded a $7 billion loss, its first since 1999, despite its effort to boost exports to new buyer China. The remaining buyers of Russian gas via Ukraine, such as Slovakia and Austria, have also arranged alternative supply. A spokesperson for Austria's energy ministry said on Tuesday that due to purchase made via Italy and Germany and the filling of storage, supply for consumers was guaranteed. Slovakia will also not risk a shortage, though now faces an extra 177 million euros in fees for alternative routes, in its economy ministry said. A European Commission spokeswoman said EU preparations had included energy efficiency measures, renewable energy development and a flexible gas system. The European gas infrastructure is flexible enough to provide gas of non-Russian origin to Central and Eastern Europe via alternative routes. It has been reinforced with significant new LNG import capacities since 2012, said Anna Kaista Itnoken. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said late on Tuesday that no one would give peace to his country as a gift, but he believed the United States would stand alongside Kyiv as it fights to stop Russia's 34-month invasion. Zelensky, in a sleek 21-minute New Year video greeting to his compatriots, also said only a strong Ukraine could secure peace and end worldwide respect. We know that peace will not be given to us as a gift, but we will do everything to stop Russia at the end and end the war. Something each of us desires, Zelensky said against a backdrop of the blue and yellow national flag. He recalled conversations with outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden, President-elect Donald Trump, and everyone who supports us in the United States. I have no doubt that the new American president wants and will be able to bring peace and end Russian President Vladimir aggression. He understands that the former is impossible without the latter, because this is not a street ball where two sides need to be pacified. This is a full-scale aggression by a deranged state against a civilized one. And I believe that together with the United States, we are capable of the strength to force Russia into a just peace. Ukraine has been wary of Trump's criticism of aid to Kyiv and his pledge during the U.S. election campaign to bring a quick end to the war. But Zelensky has expressed optimism about ensuring continuing U.S. support. Ukraine has endured a difficult year, with Russian forces taking village after village in a quick advance on the Eastern Front since the beginning of the invasion. In recent months, Zelensky has said that any settlement to the conflict is predicated on receiving security guarantees from Western nations and Kyiv securing an invitation to join the NATO alliance, a notion Russia rejects out of hand. In his greeting, Zelensky said that in the past year, Ukraine had launched an incursion into southern Russia's Kursk region, staged long-range drone strikes against distant Russian targets, and developed domestically produced drones and other weapons. Every day in the coming year, I and all of us must fight so that Ukraine can be strong enough, he said. Only such a Ukraine is respected and heard both on the battlefield and at the negotiating table. French President Emmanuel Macron said on Tuesday that he recognized that his decision to call early parliamentary elections in June had created more political instability in the country in a rare moment of contrition. The speech caps a tumultuous 2024 for Macron, who shocked the nation halfway through the year by calling early elections, a gamble that backfired when voters delivered a hung parliament with a big increase in far-right lawmakers, diluting Macron's power. Lucidity and humility forced me to recognize that at this stage, this decision has produced more instability than peace, and I fully own up to that, Macron said in a televised address ahead of New Year's celebrations. The dissolution caused more divisions in the assembly than solutions for the French people, he added, in the clearest mea culpa since the elections. Macron had justified his decision to call early elections in the wake of a bad score at European elections by the need to clarify the political situation. But he lost his workable majority and took 2 months to name a minority government, which eventually collapsed in December, the first time that happened in France since 1962. As a result, France failed to approve a budget for 2025 before the end of the year deadline, and Macron had to name his 4th prime minister this year, centuries veteran Francois Bayrou, in December. On international issues in which he retains wide diplomatic and military powers, Macron said the European Union should stop being naive when it comes to international trade, as the bloc faces threats of tariffs by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. We must say no to trade rules enacted by others and that we are the only ones to still comply with. Say no to everything that makes us more dependent on others without trade-offs and without preparing the future, he said. U.S. billionaire Elon Musk's support for Germany's far-right alternative is a logical and systematic play for a weak Europe that will not be able to regulate as strongly, Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck said in his New Year's address. The calls by Musk are not made out of ignorance, said Habeck, who is the Chancellor candidate for the Greens Party in German national elections due in February. It is logical and systematic. Musk is strengthening those who are weakening Europe. A weak Europe is in the interest of those for whom regulation is an inappropriate limitation of their power, added Habeck. The German government on Monday accused Musk, who owns social media platform X and is CEO of Telsa and SpaceX, of trying to influence the upcoming election with a guest opinion piece for the Welt and Sonntag newspaper. Musk, the world's richest person, spent more than $250 million to help Trump get elected and has been tasked by Trump to prune the federal budget as a special advisor. Musk endorsed the AfD as Germany's last hope in the piece that prompted the commentary editor to resign in protest, praising the anti-establishment, anti-immigrant party's approach to regulation, taxes, and market deregulation. We'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll take the rest of the stories. Please stay with us.
Fought a very firmly.
It's natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics today.
from the lines across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains. Through the Sahara, we bring on-the-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te said on Wednesday that he welcomed equal, dignified, healthy and orderly exchanges with China, but wondered whether there was goodwill from Beijing, given what he said was their blocking of simple things like tourism. Lai, who took office in May, has regularly offered talks with China but been rebuffed. China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and detests Lai as a separatist. He says only Taiwan people can decide their future. Speaking at the New Year's Day news conference, Lai said China was blocking normal interactions with restrictions on Chinese tourists visiting or students studying on the island, while similar bans do not apply to Taiwanese going to China. But I still want to stress this. Taiwan hopes to have healthy and orderly exchanges with China under the principles of reciprocity and dignity, he said. Journalists should ask China why its citizens can freely travel to countries like the United States and Japan, but has all these controls when it comes to Taiwan, Lai added. Is this really showing goodwill towards Taiwan? Can't they treat everyone equally? Taiwan and China have repeatedly traded accusations about tourism and travel restrictions. In June, Taiwan told its citizens not to go to China unless absolutely necessary, following a threat from Beijing to execute those deemed die-hard Taiwan independence supporters. Chinese President Xi Jinping said in his New Year's speech on Tuesday that no one can stop China's reunification with Taiwan. Myanmar said its 2024 census found a population of 51.3 million, slightly smaller than 10 years ago, as the junta prepares for promised elections amid ongoing conflict and unrest across the country, state media reported on Wednesday. The census, which was held in October, will be used to compile voter lists for the elections planned for this year that opposition groups have widely condemned as a sham. I'm striving to successfully organize a free and fair election, which is the ultimate goal of the State Administration Council, Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing said in his New Year's speech that was published in the state media. Myanmar has been in turmoil since early 2021 when the military overthrew an elected civilian government and violently suppressed pro-democracy protests, sparking a nationwide armed rebellion. The military is fighting rebels on multiple fronts, struggling to govern and manage a crumbling economy that was seen as a promising frontier market before the generals ended a decade of tentative democracy. Last month, Myanmar's foreign minister briefed neighboring countries on the junta's progressive towards holding an election, which has been widely criticized due to the absence of sidelining of opposition groups. The 2024 population of 51.3 million was down from a 51.5 million figure in the previous census in 2014, the report said. The country's Muslim minority was not included in either census. The population figure was made up of 32.2 million people counted in the census and an estimate of 19.1 million people in areas that were inaccessible due to security and transportation issues, the report said. The census figure is lower than an estimated 2024 population of 54.5 million from the World Bank, which is based on the United Nations World Population Prospect Report. The World Bank has estimated Myanmar's population at 50.7 million in 2014. Thousands of Bangladeshis rallied at a march for unity in the capital, Dhaka, on Tuesday to mark student-led uprising 5 months ago that led to the ouster of long-standing Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and remember the more than 1,000 killed in the violence. The Students Against Discrimination SAD group that led the protest dropped a plan to call for changes to the country's 1972 constitution at the rally after the interim government announced on Monday that it would prepare a proclamation. SAD says the proclamation of the July revolution is essential to honor the sacrifice of the protesters who died or were wounded, and to serve as a document reflecting the people's aspirations. Some political analysts had expressed concern that there could be fresh instability if students sought changes to the constitution without broader consensus. The Press Office of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Mohammed Yunus, who leads the interim government, said it would seek national consensus on a declaration of the July uprising, focusing on unity, state reform, and the broader goals of the uprising. It expressed hope that a declaration would be finalized soon. On Tuesday, groups of students arrived from across the country, and families of those killed in the unrest also joined the rally. They carried the national flag and chanted slogans against Hasina. The protests were initially sparked by opposition to public sector job quotas. What started as a student-led movement quickly morphed into a broader nationwide uprising against Hasina's government. The unrest reached its peak on August 5th when violence forced Hasina to resign and to flee to India just before protesters stormed her official residence. Over 1,000 people were killed during the protest, marking the country's deadliest period since 1971. An interim government was formed, tasked with restoring stability and preparing elections. The interim administration includes 2 representatives of the students. Senior aides to South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol offered to resign en masse on Wednesday, a day after his office expressed regret over acting President Choi Sang-mok's approved of the 2 new judges to a court set to decide Yoon's fate. Yoon's chief of staff, policy chief, national security advisor, and special advisor on foreign affairs and security, as well as other senior secretaries, tendered their resignation. His office said in a statement without elaborating. The aides had repeatedly expressed their intent to step down in the wake of Yoon's botched attempt to declare martial law on December 3rd, but their resignations have not been accepted, said a presidential official who declined to be identified owing to public sensitivities. The officials said the senior secretaries have been assisting Choi since he took over as acting president. 2 other officials said the aides do not participate in day-to-day government operations, but are required to report to Choi and attend meetings when necessary. His aides' latest offer came a day after Choi's surprise approval to fill 2 vacancies on the court's constitutional court handling the impeachment trial against Yoon. It brought the total number of justices to 8 on the 9-member court. Any decision in the Yoon case will require the agreement of at least 6 judges. Yoon's ruling People Power Party criticized Choi's decision as dogmatic and lacking sufficient consultations. Finance Minister Choi assumed the role of acting president on Friday after the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Dong-soo, who had been acting president since December 14 when Yoon was suspended from power. Yoon faces investigations on allegations that he led an insurrection, and a Seoul district court on Tuesday granted approval for his arrest, the first for a sitting president. Investigation into the crash of a South Korea passenger jet gathered pace on Wednesday as bereaved families began to prepare funerals after authorities finished formally identifying the 179 victims of the country's worst air disaster. The Transport Ministry said South Korean investigators have extracted the data from the plane's cockpit's voice recorder and will convert it into an audio file, hopefully offering critical information to try to explain the few minutes that led up to the crash. It could take about 2 days for investigators to convert the data to audio files, the ministry said. For the damaged recorder, the investigation team has determined it was not possible to extract its contents in South Korea and plan to send the black box to the United States in cooperation with the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, for analysis, the ministry said. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew members were killed on Sunday when the Jeju airjet barely landed at Muan International Airport in the country's southwest and slammed into a sand and concrete embankment at the end of the runway, where it burst into flames. The government has declared a national mourning period until January 4th, and the country will scale back New Year's celebrations. Officials have said investigators were expected to examine whether a bird strike, a failure of the landing gear to drop, or if problems with any other control systems played a role in the disaster. They will also investigate the pilot's apparent rush to attempt a landing right after he had declared an emergency, officials have said. Air safety experts have also questioned if the airport embankment designed to prop up navigation equipment was built too close to the end of the runway. South Korea's acting president Choi Sang-mok on Wednesday called for a fair and objective investigation and said funeral procedures have begun after all of the victims were formally identified. Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto on Tuesday said a planned increase in value-added tax VAT rate by 1 percentage point to 12% effective Wednesday, January 1, will apply only to luxury goods and services. Prabowo said the decision should end speculation over which items and services would be affected by the VAT increase. The decision also reversed an announcement by Finance Ministry officials in December. Authorities at the time had said the VAT hike would apply across the board except for cooking oil soil under a government program, sugar for industry and wheat flour, which would still be subject to an 11% VAT rate. Today, the government has decided that the increase of VAT rate from 11% to 12% will apply only to luxury goods and services that are the subject of luxury sales tax, and are consumed by those with higher income, such as private jets, yachts, and luxury homes, Prabowo said. Prabowo said the government will still move forward with planned support measures intended to soften the blow from the VAT hike, worth 38.6 trillion rupiah, which is approximately $2.40 billion, which includes electricity discounts and other tax breaks. And that's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka. Thank you for watching.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics,
Nobody's ambition is what
I have fought a very family.
natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN covers it all on ATN Politics.